Hey guys, I'm Nick and welcome to the new tutorial. Today we are checking out how to recreate this grain simulation done by Man with Machine. We will be creating this one with a little twist, I will show you a few different approaches to create these grains, but essentially we will be checking out a bit more beginner-friendly way to actually do similar effect without tons of simulations. And this tutorial is a kind of mix of step-by-step and breakdown, because I have a few things that I already done here. These are the camera slides, some static geometry that we will be going through, but our grains, this is the part that we will be doing step by step from scratch. And please let me know in the comments on Patreon if you like this format in particular, because I think it's the best way how to keep my tutorials relatively short, but still I'm doing the step-by-step explanation of the main and crucial part, and things like, creating the mountain. I think it's pretty easy to understand even if I'm doing the breakdown. So yeah, maybe this is the best format that we can do. So here we are in Houdini, and let me just remove all of these here, and let's talk about the things that we already have here. I assume let's start with the landscape, because so initially what I wanted to do is just the easy way, right? You get your grid, you spawn all your particles, your grains, your sand, whatever, you spawn all of that here on this plane. But then if you add camera, for example, this is my camera 4, you can see that, for example, if we have the grains here, we will have sort of a background here, or that landscape, that grid that serves as a landscape abruptly ends here, and yeah, it won't look so good, so yeah, what we need to do is to create, and yeah, let's talk about just one for now, because this grid is again the kind of the backdrop, it's a little cheat here if you want. But anyhow, I have my grid with a sort of a displacement, and now it's not so obvious, but you can see that in the center, and let me just pull my attributes here. If I set the max value of the noise to be 4, you can see that in the center we actually have this area which is flat, which we actually want for our grains. But now if I switch to my camera, you can see that we almost don't have any sort of environment, or our light dome, which we will be using later. We don't have it. It's just like this little triangle that we can easily overlap with something. But yeah, main idea here is to use some sort of a displaced ground, not just plain. And we can do that pretty easy. We drop our grid, which is just this grid with rows and columns, 50 size, 15 and 15, and oh, I think yeah, now it should be better. So 15 and 15 for the size. I UV unwrap that with this node UV unwrap, which is kind of good for all your very basic geometries. And then I have my displacer, this mountain node, and you can play with all of these parameters here. The only thing you should know that I wanna kind of set these min and max values, and then I can kind of control how much it actually goes up and down. And in our case, it does not go down, because the minimum value is 0, right? If I get this minimum value to -10, it means that our noise amplitude will be from -10 to 10. But we want to just kind of push our grid to the top, to the up. So yeah, and max value, I went with 1. I think I went with actually like 2 or 3, but then I thought, yeah, just 1 works well. And now we should somehow make this area in the center where all of our grains will be, we want to make it flat. So here's how we can do that. We drop that same grid, and then we drop the tube, which is this tube here. And for this tube, I just updated the radius and added end caps here. And then there's this node mask from geometry. And if you plug the grid to the left input, which is geometry for attribute, and you plug tube into the right input, which is reference geometry, it will create the attribute called mask. Here you can see point attribute mask. To see what it actually is, we can drop the color node and switch the color type to be rem from attribute, and attribute should be mask. So let's go to the color, and now you can see that this is our mask. You can control the mask radius with this radius slider here, and I had mine set to 2.33, I think. And then just a little bit of Vex code here with my favorite function lerp, which stands for linear interpolation, which allows us to kind of blend between mountain and mask from geometry. And before we dive into into this little Vex code. If you want, I think we can use blend shapes here and plug the mountain here, plug the mask from geometry in blend source, and now we will be blending from kind of mountain state to the flat state. But what if we could set the blend masking to set from attribute, and blend mask attribute should be our mask. So I think now these sliders are not working, right? Because it is kind of logical, you know. But if we set our max value to 4 to kind of visualize, I think we are good with just blend shapes and not lerp. And yeah, look at that, nice radius control here, and you can kind of control not the fall off, but yeah, the fall off and maybe the slope of these mountains. But yeah, it works with the blend shapes too. If you want to do the Vex way, so you could get that mask parameter with the point function from the first geometry, which goes into the first input 0, 1, 2, 3. From first input, from these points, we get the mask attribute. And then our position, kind of like the position of all the points, should be the result of this linear interpolation function, which gets the position from these points from the mountain, gets the position from the kind of flat plane, and interpolation value will be the value of that mask. So where the mask, you can see here all the black parts, mask attribute value is 0, and here in the white, the mask attribute value is 1. So all the 0, it will be mountain, and all the 1 will be that geometry without the mountain. So here how it works actually. So for the mountain max value, let's keep it at 1 actually. But yeah, either blend shapes or lerp, it's all the same thing here. Then just subdivide it one time and added this null out ground and drop the material, which I have not correctly named, but I will fix that later. And basically, here's our landscape, which we will be working with and spawning our grain particles on. And another one is basically absolutely the same one. I've just placed it here to kind of make that background look a bit more interesting. And you can see we barely can see it here because we will be using so much bokeh, so much depth of field. This will basically blend into a single surface, you know. So yeah, that's with the landscape. Now to the ring, and ring is pretty cool too. So bypass the retimer for now. It all starts with this tube. Let's remove the background or the landscape. So it all starts with this tube, which is just a default tube. Then poly extrude, output back should be checked because otherwise we won't have this back here. Distance set to 0.1. Subdivisions, 1 subdivision, and just make sure that here in the tube you actually have your rows and columns set properly, because if you have like 2 little rows, it will be too soft edge here. And yeah, I think just like working with subdivisions, you want to get enough of these kind of support loops. Then we drop this out to UV, which kind of works, you know, not the best one, absolutely not the best one, but it works. This make a flip transform. So I won't be like covering how I made this animation in detail because it's like super simple, you know. It's like it goes down, it goes up, and that's it. Just when you will be recreating this one, pay attention to these curves here. For example, our translate Y actually looks like this, so it's kind of fast, rapid fall, and then it stays here at the bottom and then goes. Yep, hope it yeah makes sense. But yeah, basically it's just like a flip. This Y adjust parameter is because we will have our grains that will sit on top of our landscape. We will need to add this second transform, which in my case is called Y adjust, and this is actually also scaling down our ring a bit, but basically it adjusts so our ring is not falling into the sand. Retime, we will talk about that a bit later, but yeah, then we just drop a null out ring and then the material for our ring. And yeah, now I think we are good to start working with our grains and creating our little rocks. Oh, also I have my rocks here, 4 types of rocks. You can find them in my tutorial about RBD morphing. These are very simple to do yourself. These are not something that I wanted to pay much attention and waste a lot of time, but essentially that's a sphere with a mountain node, then with the UVs, normals, and material. Here you can see that I have an option to use 4 different materials, which is kind of it's kind of correct because the sand is nowhere identical, so it's more like a mix of all different minerals. And so yeah, Just make sure you kind of add a bit of variation in size and this mountain node here. But yeah, essentially you drop that merge node here and null out rocks, and yeah, no stress that right now it's just a clump of not very detailed rocks. So yeah, let's create our rocks now. Our landscape, our ring. So we don't need our landscape for now. Ring can stay. Let's drop a geo. Let's call it rocks already. And now we want to import our ground that we had before. So our landscape has this out ground. Cool. So now I kind of know that we want just this part, right? I see that this is the only thing that we will actually see. So I can delete all of the things that are not in the camera. So we drop this group node, and of course we change the group type to be points. Group name could be, I don't know, grain source or something. And keep in bounding regions, we should check that. And now we kind of roughly can create our boundaries to include the points that are in that camera frame. But roughly, because we are also animating the camera, so it might be so it might change that frame can change. But yeah, essentially that's all we need here. We want to drop a delete node if you are not sure about your camera and what it will see. However, I do recommend you setting your camera like at this time, so you know that you probably can delete all of these points here. We just don't need them. So yeah, I would say, yeah, set up your camera first and then do this grain setup here. But basically we drop the delete node and we delete grain source, but not the primitives but points. But also we don't delete this part, we delete the non-selected part, and this is what we have here now. So now we do the poly extrude because we want to create some grains from the volume, and volume is not something that we have right now. Right now it's just a displaced grid, which is basically two-dimensional, right? So for the poly extrude we don't need any of these distance things because it will be, you see how ugly it looks, and it's not extruding in the way that we actually need it extruded. So just right now I want to check this transform extruded front, and here extruded by 0.2, and you can see that we don't have any weird things going on here. It's just extruded the edge down. The only thing we should check is output back, and now we have a perfect volume for our grains. But now you can see that we have moved our landscape up a bit. So what we will need to do is to get it back to its original position, and there's an easy mathematical way to do that. Just click on this 0.2, the translation thing that you have here in the poly extrude, and select copy parameters. And here in the transform, we wanna translate it back down to the half of that number. So minus, then right click, paste relative references divided by 2. Oh, actually, yeah, not the 0, minus. And now we have, if we just go here, you can see that we, yeah, still moving a tiny bit. I don't think that we actually need to divide it by 2. So let's check, delete, transform. Yeah, right. So this one is correct position for our volume landscape. And now grain source, our favorite grain source. Now you can see it's too regular and too not that much grains here. I went with the point separation being 0.04. Source type, I think everything is default here. Uniform radius checked, jitter scale checked to 1, and relaxed iterations, I think it will enable right now. So yeah, nice little grain source here. You know what? I don't even think that we need that much of that thick layer, you know? Maybe we can go with 0.1 and it still will be, yeah, I think it's still great. So we need this layer to be static on our landscape, because if we will be adding our animations and simulations to this one, then when the sand moves, chances are that you will see the ground, and it won't feel really good, you know, it won't feel realistic. So we kind of need to keep the layer of that sand or those grains static in order to have that realistic look, because below a certain level of sand, there's also sand. So you never actually kind of dust all the sand off from the ground, right? So that's why we can copy everything of this here. And for this second object merge, like this setup that we just have copied, I can go with the just bounding sphere, I think, or something. And size should be, I don't know, 10 by 10 by 10, and center should be 0. Just let me merge these two to see the difference. I want to colorize one into the white and another one into the, I don't know, maybe red, just to see the difference, and merge these two here. So just so we have an understanding what's where, don't forget to look through the camera that you have. And you see here, this is a good example because there won't be simulation going to this hill. So I assume we either can go with smaller size, you know, like something like, I don't know, 8 by 8 by 8, and see, oh no, 0, and here I want to go with 8. Yeah, I think this will be good. I will probably dissolve these waves when they reach this level, so I think this is where we can work with this stuff. Yep. So for this one, I want to add a bit more grains, but actually not sure if I need more grains. I just want to make the poly extrude a bit thicker, and after our grain source, really just after that. So transform, and this is better actually to do without grain source. So let's just remove that. And so I want to move my red particles, kind of active particles that I will be using in the simulation. I want to move them up just a bit, like this one. You can see that we kind of want to get them like this, but I think it's actually too many particles will be here and it will be visible. So what I want to do is go with a 0.1 in poly extrude, and for the transform just go like this. So you know, we have our particles, they will be sitting on this part here. Yeah, I think it's what we need. So essentially it will be like a pancake thing. It will be one layer of grains as our ground, which is absolutely static, and then on top we have another grain level which we will be animating. And yeah, it should look good, I think. And let's get our grain sources back to us. At 0.04, I found that it's still kind of fast to work with, and then I will show you one node that will make it even better, you know. So we have our grains. Man with Machine used, I assume it was advection from Pyro to get these nice looking waves. I want to create something similar, but without the simulation. So let me add mask from geometry here after our color. We actually don't need color anymore, but yeah, okay, mask from geometry. And then I added torus here. So let's switch to this geometry, and now also drop a color, connect the mask from geometry to color type set to ramp from attribute, and we have our mask attribute, right? So here's our mask. Interestingly, if we animate the torus uniform scale, you can see it grows kind of. And if we make it smaller in radius and maybe smaller in that height, and set the mask from geometry radius to 0.1, and now animate the uniform scale of our torus, we can see some sort of kind of wave, right? All right, that's interesting because we can use this to kind of, you know, to emulate that wave. But let's go step by step. For our torus, to make our mask to look good and without, you know, all the stepping, we want to go with a sort of 80 rows and 160 columns for the torus, because mask is actually formed from the vertices, so you need a decent geometry here. So radius could be 1, and this other radius 0.15. We want to get it up a notch, maybe 0.1 should work. For the mask from geometry, it's yeah, it's all absolutely default here. And for the torus, we want to go with a transform after our torus, because the scale here in the torus, this uniform scale here, is not equal to uniform scale in the transform actually. And with this transform node here, we will be setting up keyframes for our kind of that wave effect. And now we want to kind of see where we want to place that first keyframe. So here at the 59, 60, I assume here somewhere at, you know, 45, because it's kind of that easy ease. At frame 45, we want to start with our torus being literally nothing, but you can go with 0 because then mask from geometry will start to be really laggy. So you can go with the 0.001, basically nothing, absolutely nothing. And even if you have that little mask here in that center, you can always also keyframe the translation, the Y translation, to be minus 0.1, and now we don't see anything. And for this effect, I'm kind of going for around 90 frames, so 130, 35, 130, no, actually, you know, it should be till 105, 105. So at this point, we want to go with a uniform scale at, I don't know, at 4901 probably. And now if we check, yeah, not too bad, you know. Just, you know what, I want to move that keyframe to 110 or 120. So let's go here and move this one to 125, I think. So if we go, yeah, I think this looks good. But also now you can see that we have this little moment here around like 10 frames where our mask is kind of hitting that border, and we don't want that. We want that mask to kind of dissolve on these last frames. And there are a few things how to do that. First of all, we can start animating the y-axis value here. So here we start at minus 0.1, and if at frame 125 we set it to be like 0.5, let's see what do we have here. Yeah, we don't have much, but yeah, I think we should go even further with like 1.5 or 1.4 here, and let's check. Yeah, you see, if we go too high, you can see here that we are losing our torus at some point. So yeah, definitely not 1.45, but yeah, I think 1.2 might work also. So yeah, nope, doesn't work. Let's go with 0.08, 0.9 actually, or we can go with 0.5. I think we should go with 0.5. Yeah, we can go with 0.5, but we also will be blurring this mask. Yeah, you know what? We'll be blurring this mask, and probably that's how we will be able to soften that edge, because at this point I already want that edge to be dissolved. This means that after our mask from geometry, we can drop the attribute blur here and plug the attribute blur to the color, because we will be blurring the mask attribute here into the attribute blur. Method uniform, modal ablation, pin border points, and check that, and influence type set to proximity. And now if we make blurring durations to be something equal to 20, step size could be 1.2, 1.3, and proximity radius 0.5, but max neighbors, we can really push that forward. I would say that we start with where we start at frame 45. At frame 45, we start with just like, I don't know, 5 at max neighbors here, and frame 125, I want to go with like 50, because that wave should dissolve with time and with the distance that our wave travels. So yeah, something like that I think could be kind of cool, you know, if we play that. Probably not the real-time one, but yeah, looks good to me. Boom. It might start a bit late, so we might want to adjust these keyframes to start earlier, around at frame 30, I don't know. But yeah, looks pretty good to me. We still have this edge, and I'm not sure how we can get it off. Yeah, what I ended up doing is just adding one more keyframe at frame 90 here for the translation, and I keep the translator Y fairly static here from the frames 45 till frame 90, but then you see we have this, it's probably hard to see, let me switch to the gray background, but you have this slope here, right? You have that little hill, and this is where we need to push our torus to go up a bit in order for it to go on that slope, right? So let me maybe switch back to the dark again, and now you can see that it goes and then it just dissolves here more or less. And yeah, I think this should work for us, especially knowing the fact that we can probably blur it more, instead it to be like 30, so it goes, yeah, and then it actually dissolves right here. Maybe even going with a 55 as the max neighbors of our attribute blur. So right now it just dissolves very slowly, and also we will be retiming this, so it should look pretty smooth, you know. All right, so once we have our mask done and it shows us where we want these waves to appear to create that kind of like a shockwave effect, we can go with a few things here. In my example, I went with some noise in attribute wrangles, but I think that it will be easier for everyone here to just use the wops for the noise that will drive these particles. So let's get to the frame, I don't know, maybe 80, where we have a good visual representation of that circle that we wanna displace with the noise. So now let's go drop the WOP network. No, not the WOP network. WOP point WOP. Let's go and drop it here. Point WOP. So thing is, we wanna add noise only to the y-axis. So we will need vector to float, and we also need float to vector, because here in the output we need to pass the vector to the position, and here we will need to work with the y attribute of the position. So yeah, we will be working with these. Can probably just connect these. Nope, float value 1 to float value 1, float value 2 to float value 2, and so on. But yeah, now we can drop this turbulent noise here, and also add node, we will need that. So here's the thing, we want to modify the y value, which is the second value, plug that into the add node, and noise also goes to this add node, and then some of that goes into the output to the float to vector. So then this new float to vector goes to the position of the output, and noise needs position, and yeah, I think that's all what noise actually needs. Just make sure you visualize the point warp, and boom, yeah, we have our noise here. Works pretty good, you know. The only thing that we want to make sure that we have, and you know what, it's a pretty decent noise, right? Yeah, it looks pretty good. The only thing is that, again, we have this noise everywhere, but we want this noise only where we have the mask. So let's go with blend shapes again, and then we plug this point warp to the required blend source, and then this color, like bypassing the point warp, that it goes to the blend source on the right side. And blend masking set from attribute mask, and if we visualize now, oh yeah, I think it actually works other way. So we plug the point warp to the right input, and this one where we bypass the point warp into the left input. And now I think we are good. Let me just briefly switch to the, first of all, let's just get this color out, and yeah, now we can see something. But essentially, I would say, yeah, look at that. Look at that. We have that effect. I would say it looks pretty good, you know. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Let's plug the color back in, and yeah, let's just check once again. You know what? I also want to make sure that these particles that are right now affected by the noise, they are sitting a bit higher than the rest. So here to the add, we can add a constant, plug it into the add, and it could be just 1. So yeah, look at that. This is kind of what I want to see here. 1 might be too much. We can go with 0.6, and also for the turbulent noise, alligator noise, simplex noise. No, I would say we can go with alligator. Just make the frequency to be 1.4 for all the axis. Amplitude could be 2. Yeah, I think this could be it actually. So let's just check. It's not that bad, and it's not like a wave, you know, wave of the water, but you can always experiment with these frequency settings, because at 111 it's or actually 0.5, you see it's more it's getting more the noise is bigger here, so we have less details. And for example, turbulence, we can also set it to be 1 or set it to be 12. I mean, your detail size will be different. But yeah, I think I want to go with frequency set to something like 1.2. And yeah, look at that, guys. I think we are done with this effect. So yeah, looks good. We also will be using some retiming in After Effects, but yeah, other than that, I think this looks pretty good. And then when we combine it with our, you see, we kind of landscape geometry, we kind of we kind of blend between these two, and yeah, it should look pretty good. So now we probably want to add this retime, which for now we can bypass, but that's pretty crucial. But you know, first of all, before we even go further, I think we should start growing at this frame 40. So yeah. What do we have here? What do we have animated? We have our attribute blur and our transform. So I want both of these. I want to go to the geometry node animation editor, and probably select all of these and just move them slightly so they start the frame, I don't know, maybe 35. So when we and here, let's pay close attention. So boom, yeah, I think this works well. Yeah, looks good to me. All right, cool. So now we obviously will need a lot more particles, and we also need rocks. So now I want to make my rocks a bit random in terms of p-scale, right? So what I can do is drop the attribute wrangle and write p-scale equals fit 01 to remap the range random at pt num somewhere from 0.015 to 0.035, maybe. At least I think that's what I used in my original scene that I have already set up. And pay close attention right now. So there's this node, point replicate, and this side effects, actually in their documentation they actually recommend this one to make your simulations look fuller, you know. So right now you can see that I mean it's a decent number of points. It's 224,000, or I mean, yeah, it's the number. But then we have this point replicate, and super crucial is not to plug that in and click on show, because points per point, it will be, if we multiply roughly, I suck at math, but it will be around like 22 million points maybe. But yeah, anyhow, so these points per point is kind of like multiplication, which means that on one of your points we will be generating extra 100 points. So I want to keep that at like 3, you know. And then crucial thing here in the shape, and shape is how it will in which shape it will add these extra points. So I want to go with a circle or sphere, and uniform scale I usually set it to be like 3. Velocity stretch none. Noise I always add noise to this point replicate. It helps to break down, and it doesn't look like we just copied a few points around our original points. But for the attributes, and this is super crucial, so copy source attributes and keep source attributes. Oh no, actually we don't need this one, but copy source attributes, yeah, that we should check this checkbox here. And I want for you to pay just pay attention how many points will appear right now when I plug this point replicate and click, and now you can see it's much more dense, it's much more full, you know. And even with these points here right now we had for example 57,000 points just for this area here, not the merged one. But with point replicate now we have 171,000 points. And if in the point replicate we set this points per point to be like 10, you can see how fuller this all looks. And of course in point replicate you can control the shape, but you see how if I set the scale to be 1, right now you can see these kind of like a blobs of points or something. But so yeah, uniform scale set to 3, add noise. Yeah, it helps a bit to break down the distribution of these extra points. But basically this point replicate is the thing that you absolutely should use to save time on simulating stuff, especially when we are talking about something very small, such as these grains or bend or tiny rocks or whatever. So now you can see that we have a bunch of our points, and I will get this point replicate to something like 3 for now. But we wanna add these tiny rocks. We don't want to render out like our spheres, like we render out the particles, right? So that's why we will need to drop the object merge and get our rocks. So object merge and check this rocks base out rocks. Then we drop the connectivity. This is the default setup to randomly distribute clones on copy to points. So this connectivity attribute could be just class, attribute type integer, connectivity type points, then attribute from pieces goes here. Piece attribute should be class, which is this one, this attribute class. It should also be here. Mode should be random, and then we connect the connectivity to the right input and point replicate to the left input, and now we can drop copy to points. And here's a very crucial thing. So backend instance should be checked, and piece attribute should be class, that one that we have here in the connectivity. And then we plug the connectivity into the left input, and class, not the class, sorry, attribute from pieces goes to the right input, and we should have our little rocks here. Look at them, cool little rocks. I would say that we want to go with something like 10 points per point, and you can see right now it already looks much fuller. The other thing that we could do is set these points per point to be 3, but then yeah, I would say start with our p scale range, which should switch it to be like 0.035 to 0.065, and yeah, it will be just you know, it will be kind of different scene with bigger rocks. And not like a sand, you know. But yeah, I would say that this actually is kinda it. And I want to check how it looks when we will be rendering it, because if we enable the landscape right now, everything is, and before we fire the renderer, just briefly, let's talk about the materials. For the rocks, I'm using kind of like a rock texture, roughness and normals, and I also have my particle attribute lookup, which is the color, and that color you can see is basically a gradient from gray, from black to white, and I'm using this RS ramp to kind of offset or change it to be from white to blue in these areas. And yeah, for landscape, it's just, yeah, this normal map and white landscape, and for the Maxon and for the ring, it's black plastic ring with a bit of soft touch plastic bump added. But yeah, let's fire up the render and see if it actually works. So render, redshift render view, and select the camera and save the project and hope that we don't have a crash. And of course we had a crash because we forgot one of the kind of like the most crucial things that we should do here, and how we can actually render out these rocks. So here we go to the kind of like top level geometry, we click on our rocks and redshift obj. Here we want to set the material, our material matnet, like rock pour material is what we want to do here. And for the redshift obj, this is the most crucial part. So in the settings, we should go to the instancing tab and we should check instance SOP level packed primitives. And this is super important because you can see here in our copy to points, we have pack and instance checked, and that's how Redshift will interpret these packed primitives as instances, and then it will work really well, will work properly, and won't just like fucking burn your GPU. Now we can try new pen tape type, Redshift render view. Now it should work. Yay, look at that, we have something. Right, so obviously it might, oh, but why we have that bluish thing here? Probably because we don't have a correct color there. So yeah, we will need to do a few things here. We can probably see they are white here, and that's why it's painting them in blue, because white parts are blue in our case. So we want to go to the rocks and grab this color and move it here after our merge, and then it should work fine. The other thing is that we probably should adjust the torus radius, but also we want to make these smaller. Yeah, definitely. So it should go maybe 15, yeah, to the 35, something like that, or actually 25 to 35 might be better. And yeah, let's also check what it looks like at frame 60. It's not so bad, but I would say we definitely want to see a bit more of these replicated points. So if we can go with something like, how much? Oh, we can go, yeah, we can definitely go like twice as this number. Yeah, point replicated, just a million instances. It's not that heavy, not that hard to process million instances, because it's all instances, not the real geometry. So now if we reload, I love Houdini, I hate Houdini. Yeah, I should say this looks better than what we had before. And we slowly wanna, and we probably can talk about these lights here. So we can go one by one. Disable these. Just key, no, just these two accent lights. They actually are just targeted to the rings. So it's, you know, here in the lights, in the objects, you can enable light mesh associations, and then you can just target that ring, and these lights are just hitting that ring here. But look at this, how great it looks when we have enough of you know, the light and shadow play here. The only thing here is this backlight, which is located somewhere here and drops on that backplate, exclusively on that backplate. And look at how different it looks when the background is the same color with our hills of grains. And this RS light dome, we can also enable it. What it does, it actually just softens the shadow overall, just softens the shadows. And yeah, that's what we have. Also the thing with retiming, right? Let me just pause that for a moment. Here in the ring we have that retime, and I just set the speed 0.36 is the speed that has that ring dropping into the frame, and also at the frame 300 that ring is out of the just goes out of the frame because it goes up, and that's why I set it to be 0.36. Absolutely the same thing is done here in the rocks. Before your attribute wrangle and basically after your merge, you just drop that retime and set it to be 0.36 and just correct these input frame ranges. So it was 150 here, and output frame range is 1 to 300, and in our ring it's 1 to 150 and 1 to 300. So yeah, still this tutorial is a bit longer than I planned it to be, but anyhow, I really hope that you learned some new things, especially that we can kinda trick the visual result of the simulations using these noises and these spreads. So, you know, of course, maybe it would look more organic with a pyro simulation. Is it that crucial for me? I don't think so, because right now it's much faster than creating a simulation. If you want to see the version where I actually use pyro to advect the particles, the grains actually, let me know in the comments. If you want denser grains, use less grain separation, point separation in the grain source. There are lots of things for you to play with in this setup, and I really hope that it will help you with your commercial and personal projects. But I will be back next week with a new tutorial. Bye!